Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Learn with Jason. Today on the show, we're bringing back one of my favorite people, Marcy Sutton. Marcy, how are you?
Hello, I'm doing pretty well. How about you, Jason?
I'm doing well. I'm very excited to be going into what it's the first day of Pride Month, so I'm super excited about that. Wearing my rainbow hat in solidarity, very excited about that. We're also kicking off some things at Netlify that I'm really happy about. Like we're going to be doing some donation matching to what's it called? Trans. I can't. Oh, I forgot. Oh no, I should have looked this up. I forgot the name of it, but we're going to do donation matching to a Trans Lives Matter or like a trans rights or human rights organization to make sure that we're helping with that and doing some other initiatives. So that all has me really really excited. And today I get to hang out with you, which is one of my favorite things in the whole world. It's been a while since we've had the chance to hang out, so I'm just very very pleased to have you back around. But for folks who aren't familiar with you and your work, do you want to give us a little bit of a background on yourself?
Sure thing. Well, as Jason said, I'm Marcy, and I'm a web developer who really enjoys working on accessibility. And I've done a bunch of different things in my career, and somehow I've gotten this far, and I'm like still corralling myself back to where I started as a web developer. Because you kind of get pushed in all these different directions, like should I be a specialist? Should I not? Should I be a
Mm-hmm.
manager? Should I not? So I've kind of done this career path. And now I'm a consultant and I work with organizations to help them with accessibility as technical and as hands on as possible. And so right now, I can't really say who my client is, but I can say that I'm enjoying doing both design, like I'm giving input on design and in engineering for accessibility and working on some testing,
Nice.
automated testing, which I've done a lot of. And it's like the perfect sweet spot of everything that I want to do. And I get to work part time, which is like a dream. So yeah, things are good.
That's
I'm very happy.
excellent. I'm so happy to hear that. And Phil showed up and shared the name of the charity. It's called translifeline.org. So we'll make sure that that shows up in the show notes for anybody who's interested. Um, and so yeah, so you have been, as you said, all over the stack. You've been an engineering manager. You've been in like kind of devrel dev advocacy. You've been a straight up engineer. You have done it as a consultant, as a full time employee. I think and so now you are independently doing this, right? You're your own boss, which is always amazing. So that also means all you out there watching, after you see how amazing Marcy is, or even now, before you know what, sight unseen, go talk to your boss about bringing in Marcy to help you out. But so today we're going to talk a little bit about how to do um, like testing, right? So the thing that's really important, and I think that we're seeing more and more of an adoption of this as a baseline strategy, which I think is largely thanks to the work of folks like you and the other folks in the accessibility community, is that companies are starting to realize that they can't treat accessibility as a feature or as a we'll do it later when we have time. They're starting to treat it as acceptance criteria for building and launching features. I know that's not true across the board, but I am seeing it come up more and more as a central consideration for companies when they talk about the way they build their products. And so that's all good in theory, right? Like I hear that, I nod my head, I'm like, absolutely yes, I want to do that. What I'm not sure though, as somebody who is aware of accessibility, I do my best for accessibility, but I'm not an accessibility expert. What I don't know how to do is after I've set up that initial work, how do I make sure that I don't reintroduce problems or that I'm paying attention to the things that I need to be paying attention to in the projects I'm building, without it being something that is like given that it's out of my core expertise, right? So what safeguards and guardrails can I put up for myself to make sure that I'm not accidentally making things worse? And we talked a little bit about testing, right? So today we're going to work on that, and I would love to get your take on like what's your philosophy around this, and because I feel like there are a lot of ways that we could tackle this. So I'd love to hear what your preferred approach is.
Yes, so I'm a big fan of automated testing. I've also worked on automated testing tools, so I know very intimately where the edge is on what you can automate and what you can't. And it's improving by the day as new startups enter the space and, people focus their PhD dissertations on, areas or whatever. But I go in really trying to automate the low hanging fruit of things
Hmm.
that you shouldn't really trip over. Definitely not more than once. Like if you write a component and it needs to respond to the keyboard, you can automate a lot of the testing to ensure that contract is there so that the component doesn't break unknowingly as long as you have
Hmm.
pretty robust tests. Either you don't break it coming back from a vacation or, long weekend or whatever, and that your teammates know how something should work. And so there's a lot of those interactions that are based on the keyboard that you can start with. And that
Hmm.
has a benefit of kind of by extension, also supporting screen readers because there's a lot of overlap with making things keyboard interactive and screen reader interactive. So we
Hmm.
can start with some of those basic like interaction tests, and that's where I usually go first. But I know that that's not going to cover everything. So I have to come at it from another angle as well by looking at the web content accessibility guidelines, other best practices to know, okay, well, what am I missing through my automated test suite? Like
Hmm.
quality of alternative text or things with screen readers that can't be automated. So testing the experience, and that is where it gets trickier for people who have the enthusiasm but not necessarily the knowledge of accessibility.
Hmm.
And I see this happen a lot where people are like, yay, accessibility, and they get in there and do it and it's wonderful, and then someone actually tests it and it's like, oh, this is pretty unusable. So
Yeah.
you have to test it.
Exactly right, and so an example of this that I've seen is I've seen discussion about like the Aria markup and how we make that work, and one of the things that I see conflicting advice on is people are like, oh, make sure you add Aria labels to things so that they're accessible, and then you'll hear from the other end like, well, you should only need Aria labels if you're not using semantic markup. And so it can be, as somebody who's near to it but not deep in it, it can be hard to know where those boundaries are and that sort of thing. So kind of speaking as the person you're talking about, I care about it, but I don't have the deep knowledge that lets me know. I don't have the instinctual understanding of how this works. Understanding how to test these things and see like, did I make this better or worse by trying to add these ARIA labels? Did I, is what I'm doing actually improving things, or am I just jumping through hurdles that are actually making this experience more difficult for everybody? So I'm really excited to kind of dig into that a little bit and look at what the possibilities and use some heuristics that I can adopt as a developer to make me by default doing a better job for accessibility, right? So I know that we're on a little bit of a shorter schedule than usual. We're going to try to wrap this one up by 30 minutes past the hour. So we've got about 50 minutes from now until we need to be done here. So at the risk of being a little bit hasty, I'm going to try to jump us over into pair programming view so that we can just go ahead and start looking at some code together. The first thing that I want to do is make sure that everybody knows we've got live captioning. We've got Jordan with us today helping out from White Coat Captioning. So on the homepage of learnwithjason.dev, you can watch the stream with live captions. That's true for every stream. So make sure you head over there. While you're looking at the homepage of the site, scroll down a little bit. You can see our sponsors. Our live captioning is made possible through the support of our sponsors. We've got Netlify, Fauna, Auth0, and Hasura all kicking in to make the show more accessible to more people, which means a lot to me. While you're clicking on things on the internet, make sure you head over to Twitter and follow Marcy there. Marcy is just a nonstop fountain of really good insights and knowledge and resources. So that is a highly recommended follow from me. Definitely go make that happen.
Thanks,
So,
Jason.
so Marcy, if we want to start, what do you think is the best place to start here? If we want to kind of do some basic testing.
Sure thing. Well, I guess I should mention I have a project that I'm working on called Testing Accessibility. We've sort of danced around it a
Yes.
little bit. So testing accessibility is, I'm kind of thinking of it as like my career thesis project almost. Going back to college, you kind of have this like at least for me, I had a big project sort of at the end of it. Oh, it's testingaccessibility.com, by the way. And so after working in accessibility and front-end development, I have some stories to tell and some insights to share. So this project is in partnership with Egghead. And the first step right now is that there is a free email course that you can subscribe to. And coming up later in the year will be some new workshop material. So I am super excited to finally get this off the ground, because I bought the domain name, maybe a year and a half ago, and was like, It's a sign. I need to make this project. And then reality set in of, oh yeah, but wait, I'm an engineering manager. How am I going to do all of this stuff in addition? The timing wasn't quite right. So now I'm finally diving into it and creating some new material. So starting there, for people who want to learn about accessibility ongoing, there's that. But in terms of sitting down right now to look at your project, I would say first pick which UI we're going to talk about, because that's usually where I'm starting is I'm looking at something that already exists. Maybe I'm looking at designs, but I have something visual to react to. No pun intended, but something to look at. How is a user with a keyboard only going to interact with this web page? And that's usually where I start.
Okay, so what I'm going to suggest, so that we don't have to figure out how to implement tooling into a legacy project, is let's start with Create React App, and we can put in a couple things so that we can look at how this gets done, maybe some ways that look right but end up being wrong, and then how we can do tests to make sure that we don't fall into those traps. So let's start here. We're gonna use Create React App today, and to do that, I'm going to npx create React App, and then we'll give it a name. So let's do that in the Learn with Jason repo. So we're going to create React App, and we'll call this one Testing Accessibility.
Nice. And we can talk kind of as we're going through this about some of the really notable parts about client rendered applications built with React or Vue or other things, because there's common issues with client-side routing and focus management and really appy kind of interactive type things that are really important. Like, if we don't do anything about those when we're building these JavaScript heavy websites, they end up being less accessible than if you had just built something static and basic HTML.
Yeah. Thesis is talking about Vite. I love Vite. We did an episode last week, in fact, where we looked at, let me see, let's go to episodes here. Oh, look at this. We've got a bunch of subscriptions coming in. Thank you all so much. Who's doing it? Ben. Ben, look at you gifting out all those subs. Thank you all so much to everybody who's getting a sub right now. Make sure you abuse the heck out of that boop emote, because remember, if you're motivated enough, you can bury us in boops. So thank you. Welcome all to the boop crew. Spam those boops, as Jimena says.
What have I been missing?
I know the show. Oh, it's gotten way weirder since the last time you were on, Marcy.
Right.
The chat and I have a
weird is good.
Yeah, the chat and I have become loving frenemies. But so yeah, if you want to see how Vite works with Create React App, we did this on the Modern Redux episode. It was super fun. It's really fast and really powerful. But today we're gonna stick with the heavily tested Create React App, so that we have as few things as possible that can go sideways on us. So what I'm gonna do is open this up, and here is our repo, and inside of it we have testing library is set up. Is testing library a good one to use for accessibility testing?
Yes, it's amazing.
Okay, excellent.
Love it.
Perfect. That's what I'm hoping for, right? And so we've got some basic tests set up, and in our source folder, we have an app and a test harness set up there. So we should be able, if I'm understanding correctly, we should just be able to add more tests in this file, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
they need to apply to something. So we might need a little more UI
Yeah, so
to test.
let's look at the start command here and see if we can get this going. So we're going to do an npm run start.
And I
And
think we had one question in the chat a little while ago about the best phase of development to start accessibility testing, something like that.
mhm.
And it all depends what you have access to. I mean, if you get the opportunity to talk to the design teams you're working with and actually influence what they're doing by providing more technical guidance, you could hopefully have a better time at it. But if you're getting a site that's already built and you have to go in and fix it, I mean, better then than never. I mean, but the earlier you can incorporate accessibility, the better.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like anything, right? You know, this is something that you have to focus on, and so if you consider it from the beginning, you can make choices that support that, as opposed to having to go back and reverse engineer a bunch of previous decisions to like fit something in after the fact. It's never fun
Yeah.
to deal with that.
And it might never be accessible that way too, because
That's fair. Yeah.
the design portion of it, like we can only polish things so much as developers sometimes. And you can't go slap a bunch of Aria labels on something when maybe the design fundamentally, the interactions, the visuals. We really want to shift it earlier in the process. But you don't always have
Absolutely.
that luxury. So,
Yeah.
we give ourselves some grace.
Now, in this case, we do have that luxury, so we can build a couple things in here. And so let's make some stuff in here that we want to test. So I feel like there are a couple things that I imagine are like really common, right? So my guess is that we want to test like our forms, our navigation, and maybe a button. Are there any other things that you want to like make sure we cover?
Sure. Some common ones that come to mind as common issues, like maybe something that should be hidden but isn't, like a mega menu or so. Yeah, if we had navigation, that maybe we can do a test-driven development portion of like, hey, this has links in it. It's not open. They shouldn't be reachable right now. We can write a test that asserts something, and then maybe we go add the CSS to actually hide it or something like that.
Okay, yeah, let's do that. Okay, so maybe what we can do then is let's start with a form, because a form I know how to code. So I'm gonna do I'm gonna do a form, and in our form we will set up a label, and it'll be like email. And I'm doing this in the worst possible way right now, so I assume we're gonna refactor this a little bit, and we're gonna do it like this, and then we'll do like a button submit, right? And maybe we'll copy paste these two and say this one's going to be like name and name, right? Okay, so this is it's not a pretty form, but it's here, and it's kind of doing what we want. And then we're going to have okay, so we did that one. And then we're going to have some navigation. Maybe we can put our navigation on top, actually. And so
should that be type text, by the way? And we got a very
yeah, it absolutely should. You are right. Now, okay, so outside of just doing the minimal, definitely not correct implementation here, I'm not going to do the actually like broken implementation.
Just inventing types,
So for navigation, we would want to use like the nav element, or what's the right way to set this up?
Yeah, so in HTML5, there are semantic elements for things like navigation. So we could use the nav. I think, depending on the design of the site, if it should belong in the header because it's, a logical area in the header, that's one consideration.
That's actually a good point. Let's put the nav up here.
So we could put it up there. And then usually in a nav, I'll put a list of links, an unordered list.
Oh, an unordered list.
Then,
okay.
Yep. And then you'll have links that navigate. So this is a hot topic these days, links for navigation versus buttons for interactions. And so on the web, when we are navigating the user to a place, it should be a link usually, but it gets a little fuzzy in web applications sometimes, especially where maybe you have something that looks like a desktop style menu, but it's full of links. It gets a little bit tricky sometimes. But just remember, links that navigate, make them look like links. It's kind of the basics.
Yeah, and then let's add one more for testing accessibility. Here it is.
We got a type equals boop.
Type equals boop. Okay, so this is going to be our nav. We've got one local link and two external links, and that is showing up in our Create React app. We'll have to fix our CSS a little bit here, but as a starting point, right? That's a nav. I feel like there are definitely things that need to be addressed here a little bit, but we can talk about that in a minute. And then maybe we want like a hidden nav here. So how would we want to do that?
We could use the same nav that you've already written, and maybe part of our styling will be to make it like show and hide or something like that.
Oh yeah, perfect. So if we do that, would there be like a button here to like show hide nav?
That is a pattern I have had to code a lot. I would say if we're going to show and hide, maybe we could put it up at the top above the, learn React and
sure
sorts of things.
Let's do it up at the very top of our header. Okay.
And I'm not sure how far we will get, but we can kind of do the lo-fi, making a test fail because things are showing when they shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Which is a solid way to do test-driven development.
So, okay, do you want to start? So before I make this actually show and hide, do you want to do tests?
Yes.
Okay, let's do it.
I don't get to do this often enough. I'm always like, more tests.
I'm ready. Let's do it. So I'm going to open up app.test.js. And so we have, let's see, can I do it this way? How's this going to work? So we can kind of look at our bits here and see things and get our test in. So if I want to make a test, we would say like, we're saying we want hidden things should be hidden when they're not visible on screen. So this would be like hides nav links from keyboard nav when closed or hidden.
Yeah, I forget. Do you have just DOM in this project? I know you had testing library.
Great question. Let's find out.
So part of the
yes, we have just DOM.
Part of this is what I think is really fun, but can be challenging, is knowing your testing tools and being able to tell. And it's like you have to go read about some of these assertions for accessibility. For example, I'm looking at just DOM to see if there is some kind of an is visible matcher or assertion or something like that. And often it will depend on the implementation whether it can actually assert the access things that we want. So to really hide things, and there's a menu on this page that's actually with like that little sliding drawer that just popped out. It's a perfect example of what we would want to build. So behind this, you can see how it's grayed out. The content back there, like links, form controls, that stuff should all be hidden somehow. You should not be able to toggle to it or tab to it with your keyboard. So things like visibility hidden, that would change the display. I guess there's different.
Here comes some chaos. Sorry.
Oh no! Oh my gosh! It's a corgi parade. So, anyways, there's different techniques for kind of changing the display or whether you can tab to things, and so this is an example of what I'm talking about. And so your testing tools, if you want to rely on something like is visible, we need to go see how it works.
Yeah. Okay.
Are we going to get stampeded again?
No, it looks like we're okay.
We're clear.
But so, oh, and then look, there is a to be visible. And now
To be visible.
is visible going to be like keyboard visible or like visually visible?
Well, so we haven't done any styling yet. So we would expect that if our menu, our lo-fi menu that we haven't fully coded yet, if we write something that says this should not be visible,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to fail because we haven't added the CSS or any functionality to actually hide it. So that's how you can get the
Ah, I
failing
got you.
test.
Okay.
You get
So
the
then,
failing test written, and then you go and make it actually not be visible.
okay. And so I can render app, and then we have screen here, and screen get by text. Okay. So let's see this here. We want to render app, and then we'll say the nav link is going to be screen get, wait, what was it? Get by text.
Yeah, I tend to use test matcher or test attributes. Like in Cypress, you can do or use data attributes, or I feel like I know testing. Yeah, yeah, right there, data dash test ID. I tend to use those
Okay.
in case the text changes or just something kind of brittle. We can make our tests more robust because then that is for a test element. And I'd
Yeah.
probably put it on the
On the
anchor
anchor.
tag.
Okay. All right. So let's get that one out of here. And then we'll just put it on each of them. And I'm going to close our drawer so that we can see a little bit more on the screen here.
And I suppose it depends how you want to write your tests. Like maybe you could put a data test ID on a parent node like the UL, and then you can use the test framework to find each link. You have possibilities with how you can code these. Sort of depends.
Yeah.
How much logic or testing code you want to include.
So maybe what we should do for this one, because we're going to be showing and hiding the whole nav, is we can say we expect the main nav not to be visible by default. We're going to start it hidden, and then when you toggle that button, it will open. So we would expect here that main nav would be get by, let's see, query by test ID.
I love those APIs. I'm
It's
such
really
a nerd.
nice. And then let's get main nav. Okay. And then we can say expect main nav not, oh wait, not to be visible. Am I doing that right?
Yes. So it'll fail. And
Yes.
this gives us something to go and, make it pass with our styling. I'm actually trying to find the is visible or to be visible documentation, and I haven't found it yet. There's like sending me all over the place.
I don't know what I'm doing right now. This seems, yeah, whatever.
Watch
it wants all my stuff.
Wants to watch you.
I think I just gave Facebook permission to watch my entire computer. Whoops.
Okay, I did find the documentation for to be visible. It is under testing library.
You dirty hackers.
And
sorry.
What's happening?
Sound effects now. We've got pure, like, full blown chaos. But let's see. I think this might have stopped because I asked for permission. So let's run that again. Testing. Hello.
Well, to sort of fill in the space, to be visible allows you to check if an element is currently visible, including display not being sent to none. So we could use that technique.
Oh, nice.
You can use visibility as hidden or collapsed. I think visibility hidden That one actually does remove things from keyboard access. Unlike opacity 0, if you used opacity 0, you would still be able to reach things in the menu.
That's not how that works at all, is it? We would.
So,
it would be a style.
So, so we can style it however we want, and then we can write tests to assert that it's accessible or not. And so part of this will be checking visibility. We can also try and send focus into it and expect that it won't be focusable, like any of the links inside of the nav. That's kind of the, there's a visibility part to it and then a functional interaction part to it. So we'll write both of those assertions.
Okay. Is this correct?
Yes. I have some examples that I'm blanking on at the moment. There's different techniques for doing these different hiding techniques, and they all have like really nuanced differences. Actually, I have a code pen I could pull up that I've used in my front-end masters workshops and various things. Let me go find it.
Okay, why aren't you running my tests is my major concern right now.
Yeah, no feedback, huh? It's just sort of hanging.
Yeah, it's just hanging. So I don't know if it's like trying to activate. So let's see if I can
maybe put a
the node
verbose
process
thing or something.
Yeah.
Usually what I try to do.
You do like log level, right? No. Oh wait. What are you doing?
We're in an elevator all of a sudden.
Why are you like this?
That's very dramatic.
Did I get that right? Is log level the wrong thing?
I'm not sure. It might depend on the tool, or is that a node thing?
I don't know. Let's see. Hangs. Test command hangs. That's what we're running into. Test CI. No watchman. Okay.
Watchman. I never really used that.
I don't know what watchman is, so I'm gonna.
It must be something that Create React App includes, or.
Yeah, it must be. So let's do it this way, and let's run test CI instead. And let's maybe do it without the. There we go. Okay, so no test files related to files changed since last commit. That's incorrect because we changed this one. Press A to run all tests. Let's run them. Fails. Okay, perfect. So received element is visible, and that's what we wanted. So if we change our code, we've got class name app nav, app CSS, app nav should be visibility hidden. And let's go look at our code. Oh.
And to add more detail about the CSS that we're using, visibility hidden will keep its space so it won't collapse, but it will make it not, you don't see anything other than the space still being kept, but it will knock something out of the tab order. So you can't tab into anything with the keyboard that's in a visibility hidden region. And it will also impact what's called the accessibility tree, which is kind of like the DOM, but it's all accessibility information that gets exposed to screen readers and other assistive technologies.
Oh, whoops.
So,
I screwed that up. That's why that didn't work. Okay, so then if I move into GitHub, testing accessibility, and we'll do npm run test CI. Let's run all our tests. And it says it is still visible. despite
Okay.
the visibility hidden being set. And if we look, we can see that it's
Maybe,
hidden.
maybe this, yeah, the two, I'm looking at the Just DOM documentation. So I'm glad I mentioned earlier that you have to kind of go and read up on a tool to see like if it'll do what you expect. And so I'm looking at the documentation for Just DOM, and it says it should be visible if it does not have its CSS property visibility set to either hidden or collapse. So that should work, but it doesn't seem like it is. So things I would look for. So you're verifying that it's hidden in the actual UI.
Mm-hmm.
Are we testing the right element? Is there any kind of a timing issue? Let's see. So we've got UL main nav. That's the test ID that you were querying for.
Mm-hmm.
And
And it finds that in our test too. Like it's showing us the right thing. Here's our UL.
yep.
And then the class is app-nav, which is over here, app-nav. And we can see here that it's hidden. Like it's not visible. I can't click anything.
So this might be a really unfortunate issue with Just DOM. I'm actually searching their issue tracker.
Let's see if I do it the other way, because we would want this to bump in this case. So let's do a display none and a display block to see if that solves our problem here. So let's...
Yeah. And unfortunately, I did find an issue on Just DOM's issue tracker saying to be visible, not working as expected with visibility property from February 2020. So
Received
that's
element is visible. Are you testing something that I am not like doing?
It might be an issue with the tool, which in that case, I end up pivoting my approach. So if the assertion or the tool isn't going to give me a reliable result, I tend to like think of another way to test it. So we could, since that's not doing what we expect, what we really care about is keyboard users not going into something that's invisible. And so we could assert, when it's closed, that's where the visibility piece is nice, but maybe there's something we can check for or a different tool we can use.
Yeah.
But what we should...
So maybe what I can do is I can just put together the open and like set open here. Mm-hmm. And we'll do like a use state that comes in from React. We'll start it at false. And then what we can do is with our app nav, we're setting
and we got a couple comments in the chat, someone suggesting inline styling, which maybe that could help you rule out if like your styles aren't being applied in the test suite or something. But in terms of like the end user experience, that shouldn't make a difference. But we could take Ryan Warner's suggestion of maybe removing the not to see if it will pass on the not to be visible. Just see if that assertion is working at all.
Oh yeah, good.
It should be visible right now. Yeah, so maybe it's an issue with the to be visible with visibility hidden. So what we could try, another piece of data that we could pull in would be to try using display none instead of visibility hidden, and that will collapse it completely. It won't hold its space. I
tried that and it didn't do what I thought it would do, which is a little confusing, but it is. Yeah, not sure why it's there, but maybe what we can do is we can do like a nav link.
Your audience really likes inline styles. Why am I not surprised? Hey, they have a place. They have a purpose. I'm wondering if there's a timing issue. Like in the event loop, JavaScript is checking for some display. It's maybe, I would be surprised since there's no animations, but every now and then, and maybe more often than we would like, there are timing issues with accessibility tests. And so things like set timeouts, listening for CSS transitions and animations, sometimes you can wait and make sure something is done being styled. Found multiple elements.
That's my fault, because I added the same test ID to a bunch of things, which I'm realizing now is not correct. So maybe
Nikki T says try find by test ID. I don't know if that'll help.
Is that different than query by test ID?
Maybe that's for multiple. I'm not sure.
Received element is visible. So I think you're right that this is a timing issue, because but it doesn't make any sense that it's a timing issue, because unless the CSS is being applied after the fact, which I guess is possible because we're importing it like this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's try inline CSS. Let's do it. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, this is all interesting data gathering. So of course, I would love it if everything went smoothly, but it's kind of more helpful to kind of like see what happens when you try to test stuff for accessibility, because there is some wrangling of tooling, love it or hate it. We did get one suggestion to try Cypress instead, which I do love Cypress, because sometimes it can be the tooling, like you're trying to test UI and CSS stuff in a headless test suite, or if it's not rendering in a browser, it has some weird edge cases with how the testing tools are implemented.
It was definitely a timing issue with the way that CSS gets imported. So now that it's in line, it's doing what we expect. And so we can like revert here. Let's go back to main nav. Aha! Behold, my bucket. That's the bucket. Okay, so it's a timing issue. So apparently the way that the dev server loads CSS in Create React app means the tests run before CSS is applied, which is not ideal. But
yeah,
we worked around it. So then the good thing is that we, like, by using my keyboard, I can see that this is missing. Like, I can't get into it, but if I change the visibility, then I can keyboard nav into this.
Cool.
Which is good. That's what we wanted.
And we can write a test that basically asserts that, that manual piece.
Ooh, yeah, let's do it. So test links are keyboard navigable when nav is open.
Yes.
And so to do that,
I love that you're writing a separate test, because I totally would have lumped it in with the other one.
So I mean, honestly, I'm mostly doing this just because I don't really know how all of this is going to work. So I'm going to grab this, and now I want to click on main nav. So can I just, like, does that just work? Can I just click?
Yeah. Yep. You should be able to interact with it as a user would. So is main nav, that's the UL. So you might need to find the button or whatever.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
The on-click handler is.
Yes.
Think like a user. I am finding the button and clicking it. And you could even get really fancy and say, to test the keyboard accessibility of the button, maybe this could be a separate test, but say it was a div that had a click event on it. You could write a failing accessibility test for the keyboard by trying to focus on it, and the tool will yell at you that you're trying to focus on something that's not focusable, which is why I love.
Okay. So let's start with that. Let's start with the thing that we want to figure out, which is we want to get the nav link, and we're only checking for one right now. I think I took it off the others. So we've got the nav link, and the others don't have it. So we're gonna just test for this one. So we'll do a screen query by test ID, and we're gonna get the nav link, and then so if I go to nav link focus.
Yes. So this is when the menu is closed, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, if you expect it will, is there a test property or something for the focused element? I mean, in JavaScript, we always have document.activeElement, which will return the currently focused element. In Cypress, I think it's Cypress sci.focused. So I'm looking up in testing library.
So it looks like there's a to have focus option that auto completed for me. So let's see what that does.
It should fail, I would think. No, it passed.
Links are keyboard navigable when nav is open. So it does say that it's hidden, but it is finding this nav.
And we don't have any tests that are opening the menu yet, correct?
No, this was the part that would have opened it. So it should have.
So there's no
still be
like,
closed.
Yeah, there's no stale state. And
just for double checking, let's run that test again and make sure that it's not doing something weird. Yeah, so it expects the nav is not visible, but inside of the nav, we're finding this nav link and we're focusing on it.
That should fail. And this is where the testing tools, you kind of have to know like what's happening with them. As a lot of the older testing tools, this wasn't something that we could rely on to have the tool tell you whether you're trying to focus on a non-focusable element. But now that we can, but it does require some finessing. So we know we have the right nav link.
Right.
We know we're sending a focus event to it. And I guess it really depends what the test tool is doing. I mean, it should be sending an actual focus event there, and that should fail if it's not. You know, that link is inside of a nav element with display none on it. So that should, make sure it can't be focused on.
So it's clear that it's not visible, which is good. Is it like, because the parent element is not visible, but we DOM selected the nav link, can you focus on a hidden element if you directly go to it? Should we try to do something where we tab or something? Does that work?
Yeah, let's try it. So yeah, it should. So what you could do is use the testing tool to maybe you get the main nav and then do a keyboard event, and let's see, so just how do you do event? A testing library would be the event user event part, right?
Enter key hint, access key.
I mean, so the native JavaScript event we would be using is probably on key up, so that when the user lets go of the key, it would do its thing. So in testing library, they have made something like an extra package called user event. And I don't know if they have, oh yeah, there's a tab. There's a tab part of the API.
Okay, so I need to install that.
That would help. I mean, it's a tool I would reach for if I was using Jest and testing library. So might as well.
And you said it's called user event?
It is. I'm going to find the whole way to install it. It is at testing-library/user-event.
Perfect. And then did they install these as
wow, time is flying by, huh?
I know, it happens so fast. These are all just regular dependencies, so in it goes as a regular dependency.
And we got a question or a comment. I apologize, I haven't caught all of them, but there was a question about whether to check by a role or something accessibility related instead of get by test ID. I would say that's similar to text or a class name or even an ID, that those tend to be more brittle for test cases than using a dedicated test ID, so that then it's pretty clear that's what the testing mechanism is for. Roles shouldn't be changing a whole lot. However, I think when you have these test IDs, it just is a really clear signal that is there for testing, so don't move it.
Okay, so if I want to import the tab event, what do I do from testing library? Do I have to import something from the user event?
Yes, import user event from at testing library user dash event. So, and it is on their documentation, it just shows import user event without curly braces.
Like that?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And so now that I have user event, I have my main nav toggle, and what I want to do is tab from here.
Yes, you could say user event dot tab, and we actually get a nice assertion of we can expect the nav link to have focus once we have, and that would be on a new line. So the user event dot tab.
Oh, I get it. Okay, so then we would expect, and we're already doing that part, so we'll just take out this. That part should all work then. And so this should fail. Let's take out the visible part to make sure that it's doing what we expect.
And that assumes, well, so we need to make sure we're starting from the right place. So user event.
Links are keyboard navigable, cannot read property focus of null. Main nav toggle, what? Main nav toggle. Did I screw this up?
On line 24, maybe the main nav toggle.
That's this bit here. I might have. Oh, okay. I screwed this up. However, it's finding it despite the fact that we are not opening.
Main nav toggle that focus. Well, yeah, because we're sending a tab event, so we're not actually toggling the thing.
Right.
And yeah, and our inline CSS is still in place, so it shouldn't be a timing issue on this one.
So this is like it's not inheriting the visibility properly. So maybe we can display none. This is display block and display none.
Yeah, that might be an issue with the testing tool and visibility. Let's see, is it going to fail? Yeah.
Received element with focus.
Okay, that worked.
No, that's perfect. So so that did what we want. So now let's add the click part, and this should solve that issue.
Yes.
Test-driven development. Da 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 da. Okay.
I'm so glad that worked.
I'm also very happy that that worked. So I mean, this is exactly what we wanted, right? So we were able to kind of go in. Behold, and my bucket with a little bit of finagling, like it looks like we need to follow up on that issue with testing library about visibility not behaving the way it was expected, and that's fine. Like, you know, bugs are bugs, we can work through those. But once we figured out this display block issue, we're able to say, okay, tool, when it's hidden, go to the button, tab from the button, and you should be able to see the thing. And that's what we want. When I go here and I tab around, we get to the buttons. We go from button to learn React. But if I hit spacebar and activate with that, then my next tab goes to this home link, which is our nav link. So our test now reflects actual user behavior, hitting buttons and trying things. And that feels right. Because now if I go and I change something and it breaks this, my test will fail and it'll tell me, hey, somebody's supposed to be able to tab to this button and then tab to this button, and you're not doing that anymore.
Yeah, and I see this so often, you know, on big websites all over the internet. There are these layers, you know, like the side navs and mega menus where it just was never tested with the keyboard. And so you end up getting stuck in all this hidden content. And so these types of tests are really great because you can automate this stuff and then you can leave effort and energy and time for things that you can't automate that are more nuanced and require humans to go and check. But then you can at least sleep better at night knowing that you've tested this part.
Yeah.
Two things I would say. So you all saw us kind of have to get into the nitty gritty of testing tools and figure out what works best. I would echo the comment in the chat about potentially using Cypress instead. It seems a little bit more robust. Anything that relies on JS DOM is a bit trickier. You find lots of these edge cases with styling, and there's even a note on user event, which we just installed and used. It says, a note about tab. JS DOM does not support tabbing. So this feature is a way to enable tests to verify tabbing from the end user's perspective. However, this limitation in JS DOM will mean that components like Focus Trap React will not work with user event.tab. So all of that to say, yeah, you might want to use Cypress for this, just so that you're not chasing all of these edge cases all the time.
Yeah, it will. And like this here is like a, you know, we've got the ability in tab, like Cypress does have support for tab, or we do or we don't. Is it in here?
Well, there's other ways around it. Like you can send key events, you know, you can kind of construct the tab event. You might not have that really slick .tab function, but there's ways to do it. Other ways, you know, send a key event or something.
Yeah.
But in terms of like visibility and CSS bugs and stuff like that, having it render in a real browser can remove some headaches.
For sure. Well, I mean, I know that you've got a hard stop at 11:30, so I want to make sure that we get you out of here on time. So with that, I think we can call this one done. What I am going to do is, since we didn't get a chance to clean up the form, is I'm going to take this form that is definitely not accessible out of the source code, so that nobody gets any ideas from that bad code. So what we'll do is we'll put this up online. Marcy, thank you so much. Where should someone go if they want to take next steps? I'm gonna start that by giving everyone another link to testingaccessibility.com.
Yes, that is definitely a place. There's the email course that you can take right now, and then my new workshop stuff will be out soon. Soonish, kind of working on that. Different formats and various things. You can follow me on Twitter. I tend to post mostly about web development and accessibility, with the occasional bike or motorcycle or van thing. Watch my follower count drop when I tweet about anything other than accessibility. But hey, we're full humans, right? So
that's right. Well, perfect. Okay, so with that, y'all, thank you so much for hanging out. Marcy, thank you so much for hanging out. As always, this episode has been live captioned. We've had Jordan with us here all day from White Coat Captioning, making sure this show stays more accessible to more people. That is made possible through the support of our sponsors, Netlify, Fauna, Auth0, and Hasura, all kicking in to make the show more accessible to more people. Make sure you go and check them out. While you're on the homepage of the site, make sure you go and look at the schedule. I have a million things that I haven't posted yet. Oh boy, look at my nav immediately showing how broken it is. You can add the show on Google Calendar to make sure that you see upcoming episodes. We've also got a lot of good stuff coming. Thursday, I'm going to do a solo episode, so tune in for that. We're going to figure out what the topic will be, but we'll do that. It'll be a good time. We've got people like Tomasz coming on, Ben Myers, and I have a whole bunch in my inbox that I haven't added to the schedule yet, so please go add on Google Calendar, and that will get you what's coming up, so you never miss an episode. Okay. All right, I think that's everything. Chat, thank you so much for hanging out, as always. Marcy, thank you one more time for hanging out.
Thank you.
We're going to go find somebody to raid.
Mr. VP, how do you do it all?
I have no
Congratulations.
All right, thanks, y'all. We're going to go find somebody to raid, so stay tuned. We will see you next time.
See you later, everyone. Have a good day.